Hello everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to a brand new Wild Rift video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at Renekton, a brand new Barrel Lane champion that just came out. We'll be taking a look at the abilities, what runes you should be going for, the build, and we'll also have gameplay to show off to you all as well. But before we get into today's video, just to remind you all that XL are giving away a free Wild Rift skin. All you have to do is like the video, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll pick a winner when the next Wild Rift video comes out. Now, let's get into the guide. Renekton is a melee fighter. He uses his mobility, tankiness, and crowd control to get onto the enemy backline and kill their carries. Renekton is a powerful Barren Lane champion. With his high early game damage and sustain, he's able to dominate in the early stages against other bruisers. Now let's take a look at the items, runes, and spells that you should be running on Renekton. First up, we have the Blade of the Ruin King. Really good for when you're trying to solo the other Barren Lane champions. Gives you the attack damage and the attack speed, which is really nice. Also has a really nice passive as well, the Drain effect. Hitting the champion with 3 attacks or abilities, you deal some bonus magic damage, and you also steal 25% of their movement speed. Now with Renekton, with his abilities, which we'll go into a bit later, his second ability, you can get 3 attacks off and you can stun the enemy straight away. So it's really easy with the Blade of Ruin King to deal a lot of damage and to chase the enemy champions. Next up, we have Black Cleaver, very similar in terms of the way the Blade of Ruin King works as well. Gives you some nice health, attack damage, and ability haste, which is all really nice base stats for Renekton. And again, the same with the Blade of the Ruin King. Has really nice passives as well. Dealing physical damage to a champion, reduces their armor by 4% for 6 seconds, stacking up to 6 times. Again, really good when in combination with all your abilities with Renekton. You can stack up the Black Cleaver really quickly. Next up, we have the boots upgrade. Most of the time, you want to go for a defensive boots upgrade option. You got the Ninja Tabbies here, which give you the armor. You also have Mercury Treads, which give you the magic resist. In terms of the boots upgrade, I have the Zonya's Stasis here. You can also go for the teleport boots upgrade as well. Now, after your 2 core items, the Blade of Ruin King and the Black Cleaver, after that, you want to try and go for some more defensive stats to keep yourself alive and be a bit more tanky. Now, with that in mind, the next item we have is Guardian Angel. Really good defensive item to keep yourself alive, especially when you're diving onto the backline. Normally, when you die, you take lethal damage. Instead, you come back alive and it restores 50% of your base health. So it's really nice. And next up, after the Guardian Angel, you can go for Death's Dance. Gives you some maximum health, the attack damage, and the ability haste, which is really nice for Renekton. Also gives you some nice physical damage as well, meaning that your abilities and your auto attacks will give you some life back as well, which is really important. The main part of Death's Dance is the passive. 30% of damage taken is instead dealt as a bleed effect over 3 seconds. So you're not going to try and get one shot or anything like that. Instead, it's going to be like an ongoing bleed effect, which is really nice. So you're able to try and auto attack and use Renekton's abilities to kind of life steal up and use that physical vamp to keep yourself alive. And for the last item, we have Stuart Gauge. This item works really well with Renekton's passive, which I'll go into in a second. But this item gives you 400 maximum health, which is a lot of maximum health, especially in a game like Wild Rift. But the main part is a lifeline, which is damage that puts you below 35%, grants a shield instead, equal to 75% bonus health. Being able to get that shield effect with Stuart's Gauge allows you to stay lower on HP for longer, so all your abilities will be able to get stronger as well. Now let's take a look at the runes, and first up we have Conqueror, which you gain stacks of adaptive force when hitting a champion with separate attacks or abilities. There's loads of different ways you can deal damage with Renekton with all his different abilities, and you can stack up Conqueror really fast, and when it is fully stacked, you deal extra bonus adaptive damage as well to champions. So it's just a nice way to get a bit more damage when you're diving onto the enemy backline and you're trying to kill them squishy targets. The next rune choice, we've gone for Champion. Now, Champion's a very high risk, high reward rune. You gain 10% damage against champions, but you lose 5% each time you die until the bonus disappears. So if you die once, it goes down to 5%, and if you die a second time, it goes down to 0%. The main reason why you'd want to use Champion is because Renekton's a really early game champion, really aggressive early game bully, so being able to deal more damage to champions and trying to get that early advantage is super important. Next up, we have Hunter Titan. Now, Renekton can be a bit squishy in Wild Rift. He doesn't have the most health, so being able to gain maximum health per unique takedown is really, really nice. And also gaining that tenacity as well is really nice when you're trying to dash onto the enemy backline. And if the enemies are trying to crowd control you, it will all be reduced. And lastly, we have Sweet Tooth. Sweet Tooth is a really good rune, especially for solo lane champions. So in the Baron lane and in the mid lane, when you're taking trades in the early game against the enemy champions, you can go back to the honey fruit, which is by your tower. Sweet Tooth increases the honey fruit healing by 25%, and each fruit provides 20 gold as well. So it's a nice way to get some extra healing in there and also get that extra little bit of gold to try and get your items sooner. And lastly, for the spells, we have Ignite and we have Flash. The Ignite is really, really good. Is for when you want to go aggressive, especially with Renekton. It will help you deal that killing blow when you're trying to get that early advantage. Now, first off with Renekton, let's take a look at his passive. His passive is Reign of Anger. Now, Renekton doesn't actually have mana. Rengar has a Rage Bar. And now when you attack and when you cast spells, you gain 5 Fury. And the gaining of Fury is increased by 50% when under 50% HP. So this works really well in combination with the Sterix Gauge item, which I showed earlier. And then when you're out of combat, 4 Fury depletes every second. Casting abilities with 50 Fury or more consumes that Fury and enhance the effects of the spells. Now, when I auto attack with Renekton, you can see that underneath Renekton's health bar, you can see that the Fury is stacking up and it's currently orange. And then when it goes up to 50, that little blue tick, the Fury turns red and all your abilities start to glow. So that means that your next ability will consume the Fury, as you can see there, and it will enhance the next ability, which will go into every single ability now and how it enhances all of them. And moving on, let's take a look at Renekton's first basic ability, which is Cold and Meek. You deal physical damage in like a cone area around you, dealing damage to nearby enemies, and you generate Fury and you heal with per enemy hit as well. So it's a really nice way to gain a lot of Fury and a nice way to heal and kind of sustain yourself, especially during the laning phase. Now, the Reign of Anger, which is your passive, so the enhanced version, you deal more physical damage and your healing is tripled. So it's a really, really nice way to get a lot of healing down and also get some more physical damage. So it's really, really good when you're trying to wave clear, especially during the laning phase, and trying to get that healing and trying to keep yourself in the lane against other champions. Now, as you can see with the Cold and Meek area, the area is not that big, so you have to get quite close to the enemies to be able to activate the Cold and Meek. But when you actually activate it, you can see that Renekton just spins around in a circle and you deal damage in an area around you. And once you get to your enhanced version, so the version which you need 50 Fury for, when you activate it, the Cold and Meek turns red and you deal more physical damage and your healing is tripled as well. Next up, let's take a look at Renekton's second ability, which is Ruthless Predator. It empowers the next attack to strike twice, stunning the enemy for just below 1 second and dealing some physical damage. And then the Reign of Anger, which is the Fury version, the upgraded version, you strike 3 times instead and you stun the enemy for a longer time, dealing even more physical damage. Now, when you activate your second ability, you can activate it pretty much whenever you want to because it just empowers your next auto attack, but just make sure that you target lock and you attack the right person when you want to stun them. And when you activate, you can see that Renekton's blade turns red and then he swipes at the enemies and he stuns them for just under a second if you have the version which is not furied. But when you have 50 Fury and you get your enhanced version, you can see that he slashes down and the last slash kind of strikes from the top to the bottom and they are stunned for a longer period of time as well. Really good when trying to crowd control, especially the enemy backline and the squishy units. You can use your passive to get your Fury up, get the longer period of time on the stun, and also strike them 3 times to proc your Blade of Ruin King passive. For the next ability, the third ability, Slicer and Dice, you dash in a direction dealing physical damage and generating Fury for each enemy pass through. And if you hit an enemy, you are granted a second dash as well that you can cast within 4 seconds. This is really good when you're trying to jump onto champions or trying to escape from champions, especially when you hit an enemy, so that could be minions, monsters, or even champions. If you hit your first slice, you'll be able to dice away and be able to escape. And in Reign of Anger, the enhanced version, the second dash now deals more physical damage and it also shreds the armor by 40% for 4 seconds. As you can see, the area of Slice and Dice is not that big. It's kind of a small area, so you still have to be relatively close to a champion. But when you use the ability, if you go through an enemy champion, you'll be able to use it, and then the ability glows again. You can see that you've got a bit of time before you can dice back through them. And then the enhanced version, so the passive version, it's pretty much the exact same thing. There's nothing really to it. It's just your second version will deal more damage, and you'll also be able to shred the armor as well. And last but by no means least, we have Renekton's ultimate, which is Dominus. You gain Fury and you gain health when you activate it for 15 seconds. And every second after casting, you gain even more Fury and you deal some magic damage to nearby enemies around you. And this ultimate really what makes Renekton big and what makes him really hard to kill and allow you to get onto the enemy backline. And when you activate it, as you can see, Renekton gets even bigger. You can see the area around you deal magic damage, as you can see, to the target dummy. And I'm generating Fury every time as well, so I don't actually need to auto-attack. But when you're auto-attacking and you're gaining Fury at the same time, you'll be able to use your abilities a lot and being able to use all that Fury that you generate up to enhance all the abilities that I've just mentioned and make Renekton pretty much an unstoppable force. Now let's take a quick look at the skill order and what you should be leveling first with Renekton. So your first ability you should unlock is your first ability. As mentioned before, it's a nice AoE ability that you're able to use. Nice way to heal up as well if you're getting early trades off against the enemy champions. And when you get to level 2, you want to go for your Slice and your Dice. This allows you to dash into the enemies. You can quickly get off your first ability and a few auto attacks and then dash away again. Allows you to go in and get some nice easy trades off without you losing any health and then being able to dash away. It's also really good if you want to try and escape any ganks or any junglers that are trying to gank your lane. And then at level 3, you want to go for your second ability. This will allow you to get all your basic abilities available. Your second ability is really good in the laning phase in the early levels to be able to stun the enemies, especially if you have the Fury version, the passive version as well. You can do a lot of single target damage on the enemy champions. And once you have all your basic abilities available, the first ability you want to upgrade first is your first ability. This allows your cooldown to get lower, your healing to be a lot more, and also the damage to be a lot more as well. And make sure you level up your ultimate when possible as well, especially at level 5. Make sure you don't miss this one out. And then after that, you want to make sure, as mentioned, to upgrade your first ability first. And then after that, you want to go for your Slice and your Dice. This allows your ability to be on cooldown less, being able to, move around and get a lot of mobility with Renekton is super important. And then last but by no means least, make sure you upgrade your second ability. Overall, Renekton is a really strong champion, especially in the early game. And your main objective is to try and get that early game advantage against the enemy Baron laner. Try and get a few kills under your belt and then use your items and use your high mobility to try and carry when it comes to the mid and the late game and when it comes to team fights. Renekton's also really good in 1 versus 1 situations and he's really good when it comes to split pushing. So if this is an option, then it's really good to try and go into a side lane, preferably one that is opposite away from your team, and try and push down the minions and try and take down towers. You take towers really quickly and your 1v1 potential is really high, especially with the item build and with your empowered abilities, being able to do a lot of damage and being able to escape if enemies try and jump onto you. I hope you all enjoyed this in-depth look at Renekton. He's a really fun champion to play and you should definitely give him a try. Let me know what your first thoughts are of Renekton down in the comment section below, and if there's any champions that you want us to cover, let us know as well. And until next time, make sure you comment, subscribe and like the video. As always, take care and I'll see you all very soon. Peace.